maybe everyone has filed in, so we might as well get started. I'm just gonna say before we start, I'm super nervous. I don't like public speaking very much, so just bear with me. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so my name is Junie Campbell. I'm an organizer with Springfield No One Leaves and a proud resident of Easthampton. So I'd like to start out by thanking everyone for coming out. This is amazing. It's just great to see all your faces. I've seen so many people who I recognize from all over the valley, and so that's a really beautiful thing. And I'd really like to thank the city councilors who showed up and for your work passing the rent control resolution that you passed a few months ago, I think. Yeah, so great work, thank you. Really amazing stuff. But it's the first step in this fight, right? We're in a moment of crisis here in Easthampton, across all of Massachusetts, and of course across the whole country, right? Rent increases are driving families out of their homes. Corporate investors are aggressively targeting our neighborhoods, displacing longtime community members in pursuit of profits. And from the federal level down, we're seeing relentless attacks on the working class. So in the face of all of this, it's up to us, neighbors, organizers, elected officials, and allies to take care of our communities. So tonight you're going to hear from renters in Easthampton who are being forced to make impossible decisions between keeping a roof over their heads and meeting their basic needs. You'll also hear from organizations and lawyers who are on the ground every day fighting to keep people in their homes. So they're all here, they have resources and information. So if you or someone you know is going through a housing crisis, please seek out someone in a red shirt like the one I'm wearing. Right? What we're asking is for the Easthampton City Council to stand with us. We're asking you to show up at actions against corporate landlords, to take an active role in the fight for rent control and tenant protections at the state level, and to pass a citywide ordinance that creates real restrictions and accountability for corporate investors trying to buy up our homes. I've lived in Easthampton for 5 years, not continuous. I had a very brief and regrettable stint in Florida. But since I've lived here, I've always rented from a small landlord, someone in the community, someone who I could know, someone who had a face. These landlords have always done what they could to keep the rent affordable for me and my roommates. In part, I think because they love the city of Easthampton and they want the people who live here to be able to partake in all the wonderful opportunities that the city has. We have a really amazing and beautiful downtown. And I've heard from a number of people, and you're all gonna hear from them, some of them too, that people are barely scraping by. They're not even able, after paying rent and utilities and all the other bills that life accumulates, they're not even able to afford to go and get coffee from Small Oven, right? And that's a huge problem. So if the apartment I rented now were bought by a corporation like Hurricane Properties, they would jack up the rent and I wouldn't be able to afford to live here. And I'd have to leave. And I've lived here for 5 years now. And that would just, it would suck. It would suck. So that's why I'm personally asking the City Council to take a stand with us against the encroachment of corporate landlords that are pricing working class people like me out of the city. Easthampton has the opportunity to lead, to show that making housing a human right is not just a slogan, but a commitment. A commitment we live out through policy, solidarity, and action. Thank you. Thank you. And I would like to invite Nancy up to speak.
Nothing like being first. Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy. I'm from Pleasant View Apartments. We've been at this since January, and we haven't really gotten much response from our landlords, but I'm going to tell you my story. When I left a corporate job 25 years ago and moved to Easthampton to pursue an art career, rents were affordable. I was able to build an art business while working part-time. As an artist, I helped grow Easthampton into a more desirable and art-focused place to live. Unfortunately, partly due to big corporate real estate investors who buy up properties and raise our rents, it's no longer affordable for me. Since Joseph and Daniel Sherbin of Rowan Capital, LLC, purchased Pleasant View Apartments, our 33-unit 1970s apartment complex, the rent has gone from $11.50 to $22.95. And that is over 6 months, okay? So we got charged $15.50, and then every time they advertised it, it was like $17.50, and then it was $18.50. So there's people at all these levels, and I saw it on the weekend on Zillow, $22.95. Total greed, total profit. They're already making a ton of money by charging us $13.50. Okay, so with that said, they are displacing a mix of disabled, elderly, single renters, and families that have called this place home for years. It was clear from the beginning that their main objective was profit over people. They come from out of state and have properties all over the country, promising high returns for their investors. They advertise that on their website by buying up low-income properties and jacking our rents. The sale happened on November 17th, and the very next day I came home to a notice on my door informing me of a 35% rent increase. That was $400, one go. If I didn't sign the new lease within 12 business days, a notice to quit would be issued and an invitation to sign a lease at 50% increase of $600. I knew there was no place for me to go. It was during the holidays in the dead of winter. I was in a state of panic. I felt trapped. I cried, and then I signed the lease. How am I going to afford another $400 a month? Now my rent is 42% of my income. How am I going to keep up with future rent increases? With very little in the way of retirement, I'm sure I'll be working for the rest of my life. That is why it is so important that you, our city councilors, one, take a more active role in passing rent control legislation in the Commonwealth. We need you on Beacon Hill, calling representatives across Western Mass and letting them know that your constituents need rent control. Two, we want you to show up with us at our rallies and protests against these corporate landlords. Tenants need to know you have our backs, and corporate landlords need to know we can all see how they are treating residents in Easthampton. Three, work to pass a citywide ordinance to regulate corporate ownership, prevent private equity firms from buying up our homes. Housing should not be a business model for investors to get rich off of. And we have the opportunity to lead the way with your leadership in Easthampton. Thank you for passing the resolution last March supporting the state legislation stabilization bill that stabilizes rents and protects tenants. I am here to ask our state legislators, take the next step. Pass these bills, giving us the opportunity to stop these predatory landlords from feeding off of our communities. Thank you for listening to my story, and thank you for doing the next right thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I'd like to invite Amy up.
Hey everybody, it's so good to see you all here. I share a distaste for public speaking, but when shit hits the fan, you gotta do stuff you're uncomfortable with, so here I am. I'm a member of the 17 Adams Street Tenants Association. Yeah. Our building was purchased in April by Hurricane Properties based out of Charleston, South Carolina. Yeah. In their introductory letter to us, they wrote, Hurricane Properties is committed to providing our tenants with a safe, comfortable, and affordable place to live. We strive to provide excellent customer service and to build relationships with our tenants that are based on trust and respect. This is a complete lie. Hurricane Properties doesn't care at all about tenants and the communities they're ruining. Since this introductory letter, we as tenants have experienced continuous assault on our sense of well-being. They've raised our rent 30 to 50%, threatened us with eviction, told us to go find another place to live, intimidated us about entering into a renter's market with no landlord reference, and suggested we wouldn't be getting our security deposits back. They also haven't made promised updates to our units, but we're not going anywhere. Yeah. We refuse to pay the rental increase. Hurricane Properties states in their quarterly report to investors that their success can be attributed to aggressively raising rents for their tenants. We do not accept this, and we will put a stop to their hideous quest for profit by raising the price of living to untenable rates. As Tenants Association, we are only able to get one meeting with Hurricane Properties, at which none of the owners were in attendance. Instead, they sent their office manager to tell us that they won't be negotiating with us, that they evicted people all of the time, and that they were happy to start that process with us if we didn't sign the new lease. Hurricane Properties has been extremely dismissive and threatening in this process, leaving us in the dark about what our future of tenancy is. If we get evicted, we're facing an extremely competitive rental market where the cost of moving into a new apartment could be up to $6,000, or more dollars. Extremely high broker fees, like the ones you see from Rent NoHo, make it impossible for people to move into new spaces. We have tenants in our building who are facing houselessness if this eviction goes through. The amount of anxiety and stress that being in this situation causes is destabilizing. And I am grateful every day that I am in a tenants association so I don't feel alone in this fight. If you're facing similar extreme rental increases or mistreatment by landlords, I encourage you to join forces with your neighbors because that's the only way we're going to get through this. There's so much at stake here. While investors all over the country receive their payments from Hurricane Properties, people are getting evicted and communities are being threatened by a tide of predatory real estate investors who do not care about us. They are disconnected from the communities they are ruining, but it's time to hold companies like Hurricane Properties accountable. Easthampton has the opportunity to serve as an example to the rest of the towns in the valley. Elected officials need to take action to safeguard this community. Towns need to start purchasing multi-unit apartment buildings to protect them from the barrage of real estate investors and to ensure that renters can keep living in Easthampton. Thanks. Every time I drive by the signs on Main Street that say, "You belong here," I think it really doesn't feel like it. And who is this sign for? Middle to upper class homeowners? What about renters? It's not right to have that hanging on our street posts when in reality, most of us feel like we're being pushed out. To any council people present, I ask that you take this issue seriously and that you fight for our safety, listen to our demands, and work towards a sustainable future for renters. We need rent control, we need towns to purchase buildings, and we need to keep companies like Hurricane Properties out of Easthampton. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Next on our list of speakers is Rose from Springfield No One Leaves. Rose?
Good evening, everyone. I, like everybody else, hate podiums, find them very formal. My name is Rose Webster Smith. I'm the Executive Director of Springfield No One Leaves. And I am here in support of all tenants across Western Massachusetts. I have a great team that's here to assist tenants who want to organize their buildings and fight back against corporate landlords. In my role at Springfield No One Leaves, I have spent the last 8 years in housing court with community legal aid as a lay advocate. And I have seen thousands of tenants pushed onto the streets, and the landlord is represented by an attorney and is never there in the court. They are just, the tenant is a number on a spreadsheet. They are not a human being. And so I urge all elected officials, talk to your neighboring towns. It's great. And I thank Easthampton for stepping out and passing a resolution in support of rent control. But we need Northampton. We need Holyoke. We need Hamden. We need Franklin County. We need to remember that 70% of our state legislators are landlords. And so it's going to take our communities coming together and pass rent control, short-term rental ordinances, limiting corporate home ownership. I'm going to share some data with you. So in 2024, out of 5,439 eviction cases, corporate landlords filed 3,669 of those cases. In Q1 of 2025, so that's 3 months, LLCs sold their properties to homeowners who want to be and move forth on the American dream, right, to be homeowners, 296 properties, and profited roughly $39.5 million in 3 months. We need our communities and we need our state house first to give communities municipal powers to pass these types of ownership, these legislations that we can do an ordinance for corporate people buying up our housing stock. We need municipal powers, because right now, if we don't get municipal powers from the state house, then the cities like Easthampton can't pass an ordinance. You will be sued by these corporate landlords, and take it from me, I know I was part of the lawsuit where the city of Springfield got sued over our ordinance, and it went all the way up to the highest court and we lost. And what they said is we need municipal powers. So talk to your state legislators. I'm guessing you became a town official because you care about your communities. Now is the time to start applying some tourniquets because our communities are bleeding. People are bleeding, and under this administration, it's only going to get worse. We also know that LLCs bought 270 more properties. So they're going to continue to buy these properties and drive up the market, which drives up the property taxes for our small landlords, which forces them to sell so that all of our housing stock will be owned by corporations. Now is the time. It is the time to talk to your communities, talk to your residents, and put policies in place so that our communities can stop bleeding. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Rose. Next in our lineup is Anne. Anne, okay, welcome.
Hello. So I've been a resident of Easthampton for 13 years now at 17 Adams Street. I won't repeat Amy's statement, but their statement basically summed up exactly what Hurricane Properties is doing to our building. Instead, I'm going to read two statements from residences in our building who wish to remain anonymous but want their voices heard. So I will be their voice. My experience moving into this property over 2 years ago was subpar. The landlord failed to uphold his terms of the lease on my move-in day. From that day on, it was compromise after compromise and truly unacceptable landlordship, which required me to do the maintenance myself without reimbursement or compensation. The same story continues after the building was recently changed over to Hurricane Properties LLC. My apartment still did not receive any repairs or upgrades, but my rent was raised $245 a month. Due to the pressure of being a self-employed, single trans man, I accepted the new terms of the agreement and the rent increase. Ultimately, upgrades and repairs are still my responsibility in order to have a basic standard of living, but things still remain subpar, including a portion of my 400 square foot apartment that is not insulated and therefore not usable during the winter months. Oh, my outlets are also not usable, half of them, and I still have a broken window. Although the new rent could be considered market value, let's see. All told, a move was not financially feasible for me, and this is an area safe for my personhood, so I chose to stay. I support the tenants of this building, but could not personally take on the risk of the burden of stress that comes with not signing the new lease and risking my housing and safety. Although the new rent could be considered market value, our spaces are truly very small and humble. Some tenants have occupied this building for many years. Some are on fixed income, disability, etc. In this day and age, I was happy I wasn't asked to vacate for complete renovations without an option to stay. It's interesting how optimism and counting our blessings can spin a bad situation better, but that doesn't necessarily make it right. 10 and 2, and there's only 2 that I'm reading. 17 Adams Street has been my home for more than 11 years. I am a 50-year-old woman living in a 1-bedroom apartment with my dog, my emotional support animal. Since I cannot work due to my disability, my only income is the Social Security disability insurance. Although money is tight, it has been worthwhile for me to live in a safe environment that I feel home, close to my family and my medical providers and my friends, and also close to the parks and nature trails that I can enjoy with my dog. Making ends meet has been particularly difficult since COVID. As we all know, the cost of everything has gone up exponentially since COVID. Since 2014, my rent has been increased by up to 4% annually, as written in my month-to-month lease. Based on this rate of increase, I've known that I'm only going to have a limited amount of time here. At some point, I will need to find other housing. However, due to my disability and limited income, the process of finding this other situation could take quite a while. But I felt secure in knowing that I could afford to stay here at 17 Adams Street for at least a couple of years. That all changed when Hurricane Properties bought the property and informed me that in order to stay here, I would have to sign a new lease, which I had 6 weeks to do, and they would be increasing my rent by $470 a month. A more than 50% increase for someone who is living on disability. Where are they gonna get that money? They can't go to the state and say, hey, my rent went up 50%. Can you give me 50% more in my disability insurance check? No. So they continued to write, I am terrified of being evicted and left homeless before I'm able to find another place with my budget. I've always been a good tenant and paid my rent on time, This increase is outrageous. I want to continue living here under the terms of my original lease, or at least until I'm able to find another adequate housing situation. One that is hopefully near Easthampton, Northampton, the community where I have resided in and felt safe in for my entire life. So those are their statements, and I just want to say I have my own, but this is based on what everyone has just said before us, all of the reasons stated. This is not right in our community. This does not deserve to be a part of our community. We want our community to be our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. I'd like to invite Jackie next. Jackie?
I'm trembling. And I don't have anything prepared or anything, except for this at the end. My name is Jackie Schneer, and I live at Pleasant View Residences, whatever it's called now, the apartments on National Lenox Street. I've been there for about 2 years now, and I love it there. I love the spot. It's beautiful. It's quiet. The neighbors are great. Most of them. No, just kidding. And, oh, sorry. Neighbors are great. I have a 5-year-old son, and he loves it there as well. I'll be over there. I'm like from all over Massachusetts and a little bit of Florida. Hey, hey. But I went to UMass Amherst, and that's where I fell in love with Western Mass. And then my baby daddy and I we had our family here. He's been in his house for 15 years in Easthampton, and raising our boy there, and things didn't work out. So I had to find a place to live, and magically, the old property manager that we had there for a long time, who was a wonderful man, got me in there. The rent has not gone up in the last 2 years, and I've been paying $11.50. And then we got notified by a Better Way property management company that our rent would be going up by $400. And yeah, you heard the story from Nancy. It was rough, and I was shocked, and I couldn't believe that this was happening, that people could do this to other people. I feel though that I am like one of the fortunate ones. I have a full-time job. I have family that can support me financially, and I just wanted to speak for like the family that was below me that was displaced pretty much, and they were young too. One worked at Big Y. One was a FedEx driver, and they were the nicest people in the world. And then they had their baby in June, and in November, right before Thanksgiving, is when we were notified that our rent was going up, and we had to sign this by then, or this and that. And they somehow, they packed up all of their stuff as fast as possible, found another apartment because like, I don't want to say God, because somebody was like looking out for them, and they got into an apartment because they wanted to have their first baby have a place to celebrate Christmas. And like, because there was no way that they could afford the rent increase. And we had a couple other instances kind of like that at Pleasant View. So I just wanted to share the story of the people like that are no longer living at Pleasant View now. And I don't know. It's just It was infuriating and sad. And I feel like I'm like just getting over all these feelings. Like some people are just starting out and like the shock and the anger and like I'm just like getting over the shock and the anger and like being like, okay, like what can we actually do? Because I didn't think that we could do anything or anything was gonna happen. I thought I was gonna move back into my mom's place or something. I don't know. But I feel like people said, now that we're together and I have so much in common with the people that have shared already, that like it's giving me hope, a lot more hope that maybe we can do something together. So that's why it is important for you, our city councilors, to take more of an active role in passing rent control legislation in the Commonwealth. We need you on Beacon Hill. I need water. Calling representatives across Western Mass and letting them know that your constituents need rent control. We want you to show up with us at our rallies and protests against these corporate landlords. Tenants need to know you have our backs, and corporate landlords need to know that we can all see how they are treating residents in Easthampton. Thank you, darling. And please work to pass a citywide ordinance to regulate corporate ownership and prevent private equity firms from buying our homes. Housing should not be a business model for investors to get rich off of, and we have the opportunity to lead the way with your leadership here in Easthampton. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jackie. Next, I would like to invite up Joel.
Hi, I'm Joel, and I'm a lawyer. I know I don't look like one right now, but I actually am a lawyer. Despite my youthful appearance, I've been doing this for 36 years, and our firm in Springfield represents tenants. So we have been involved in the Adams Street property and in the Pleasant View property. And I want to say, well, really, I guess what I want to say most is it's been such a privilege, more than it's been us assisting them. I feel like it's super inspiring. As you can tell, like just listening to these people, I'm like, oh yes, yeah, I'm with you 100%. And that's what it's really going to take to do something about this. As was said, there is no limit on what a landlord can charge a tenant in Massachusetts. You don't have to agree to a rent increase, but then you face what's called a no-fault eviction in court, and you can get evicted. In the landscape where 91% of landlords have a lawyer in evictions and 4% of tenants have a lawyer in evictions, your odds are really low. So the solution is not so much the legal part. I mean, we're going to be there fighting for everybody, and I feel like our firm is open to you, and please call us as much as you want, and we'll be there for you. But that's not the solution. The solution is this. The solution is everybody here joining together. I've been a part of a couple of recent examples I just want to talk about briefly. One was with Katie, really. And that was a huge New Jersey landlord, bought 1,200 apartments in Springfield and immediately started jacking up the rents and ultimately did like less than zero repairs. With the organizers and the tenants working hard and the lawyers and the city and the attorney general, everybody worked together and they sold everything in 3 years. We ran them out of town. And so, what that required was, city officials, and it required you. It required tenants, allies, people who said, we're not gonna tolerate this. The mayor, again, the attorney general, everybody has to be on board and we can win. And the expression is when we fight, we win. And when we fight, we win. So So I guess I also want to say, in fact, the same thing just recently happened in Holyoke in cases we were involved in. We represent tenants in eviction cases and in what we call affirmative conditions cases where there are bad conditions and you go to court to get them fixed up. And again, another New York-based landlord bought a bunch of properties in Holyoke, and we just found out they sold recently. And, that's because the tenants and the lawyers and everybody involved made a ruckus about it. So it is possible to do this. What Pleasant View hasn't said is that, it's been so inspiring being at the meetings, eating the pizza, hanging out with everybody. The most inspiring part is that you can accomplish a lot if you work really hard at it. And so we all demanded a meeting with the owners. The mayor demanded a meeting with the owners. And shortly after that, after they said, why do you keep saying such bad things about us in the press? And people in their hometown of New Haven were saying, gosh, what are you doing up there? That doesn't sound like you're doing great stuff up there. They rolled back the rent $100. So even though that's not the final answer, there have been real victories already at Pleasant View. People haven't mentioned it, but I feel like we should not dismiss that. That's super important. So the answer on the law side is rent control, is rent stabilization, as they're calling it now, so we don't say things that get people all excited. So it's rent stabilization, but actually the bill itself doesn't impose rent control on anybody. It allows cities and towns to enact rent control measures. So you don't like rent control in Wellesley? Fine, then don't do it. But in Easthampton, where we need it, we should pass it. So in the end, rent control is really important. It's really important for all the elected officials, and I want to say, Connie, thank you so much for all your help so far, that elected officials join in and are with us, that we move to pass rent control, and that we explore what we can do at a city level, whether it's possible to try to prevent some of this corporate ownership. And I want to be the first to volunteer saying I would help research that and see what we can do. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. I would like to invite up Aya next. Yeah, round of applause.
Hello, I'm Aya. I also live at 17 Adams Street and am facing eviction and all the threats that were mentioned earlier. I would like to speak on behalf of my neighbor Bree, who I want to say before I read their piece is such a great neighbor, such a gift of a person to live next to. I have had flat tires over at the post office and needed a ride, and they're always there, anything they can do. So I want to, speak for them, who has to work full time at Walgreens and has to work really hard to live in the place that we live now with the rent that we have now. So anyhow, my name is Bree Ross, and I live at 17 Adams Street. I've lived here for 4 years. During that time, I've begun therapy for my PTSD, and I've been able to make friends in this community that support me on my journey to heal. I've lived in 3 different states and many more towns, but Easthampton is the only place that has felt like home. This is the first time in my life that I have felt safe and secure. I have even been able to begin painting again, something I hadn't been able to focus on for several years. Hurricane Properties purchased our building a few months ago and have disrupted that feeling of safety and security. We all know we can't control who owns our homes as renters, but I have never suffered indignities like this from a landlord before. Raising my rent 30% when I have been paying on time every time for 4 years feels like a punishment. I feel dysregulated. I feel disrespected. It's demoralizing to be doing your best and more and still not be good enough. If this rent hike is successful, there is a good chance I will have to stop going to treatment for my PTSD so I can afford groceries. Easthampton is my home. I deserve to stay here. I belong here. The community is not a product to be bought and sold. It doesn't have to be like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Aya. Next up is Eileen. Come on up.
First, I want to, on behalf of everybody, thank all the council members for coming, and a special thank you to Connie for helping us organize this meeting. My name is Eileen Roisman, and I live at 17 Adams Street. Hurricane Properties wants to raise my rent $250. I haven't agreed to pay that much, so any day now I expect they'll try to evict me. With the help of Springfield No One Leaves and the legal support of Joel Feldman and his legal firm, I'm going to make it really hard, if not impossible, for them to do that. That's right. In good faith, we invited Hurricane here so they could hear directly from tenants and learn about our community. But they made it clear that further negotiation was off the table. They're about to find out that people like us aren't going to put up with their bullying anymore. Instead of sharing more of my story, today I want to talk about what actions can be taken to address the corporate takeover of housing. At the national level, one piece of legislation is currently under discussion. In December 2023, Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon introduced a bill aimed at huge private equity firms that own hundreds or even thousands of single-family houses as rentals. The bill would limit the number of houses they can own and would force them to sell the houses they do own to families over a 10-year phase-out period. Any extra houses above the limit would be heavily taxed. That tax revenue would go into a trust fund to provide down payment assistance for homebuyers. Well, we'll see. A lot can happen at the state level. This information that I'm about to read comes from a news source in Fayette County, Georgia, just south of Atlanta, but it's applicable anywhere. The Georgia State Assembly passed a bill that says if a landlord is an LLC based in another state, they must have someone in Georgia who can be reached when repairs are needed. In our case at Adams Street, Hurricane Properties has their own local maintenance team, but they don't communicate clearly and do shoddy work. At Pleasant View, the out-of-state owners contract with a local company that tenants have found to be unresponsive, incompetent, and hard to deal with. To be effective, this kind of legislation would have to be expanded to account for negligence. Also in Georgia, a bill was proposed to cap the number of homes a single company could own in any one county in order to prevent any of them from dominating the local market. But the bill stalled after a former state attorney general testified on behalf of corporate owners, calling it potential overreach. Senator John Ossoff is investigating corporate landlords across Georgia. His office has asked for data on how many homes they own, what fees they charge, and how often they evict tenants. He is also looking into whether these companies receive early access to home listings before the homes are made available to the public. In general, it's been suggested that statewide landlord registries would be useful to find out who actually owns properties, which would make targeted regulations more effective. In Rhode Island, the Department of Health established a landlord registry last year, mainly to address the problem of lead exposure, but also to identify instances of any kind of safety noncompliance. Landlords that don't register are subject to monthly fines per unit. In Massachusetts, as other people have talked about, this year the legislature introduced a bill that would allow municipalities to limit rent increases and require landlords to have just cause for eviction. This comes long after a bill prohibiting rent control was passed by a narrow margin in 1994. The Easthampton City Council recently passed a resolution in support of this new bill. On the other hand, the Institute of Real Estate Management is urging its Massachusetts members to oppose the bill because it would, as they say, implement harmful rent stabilization. As residents, we can contact our state reps and state senators and urge them to co-sponsor and vote on this legislation. A lot can be accomplished at the local level. Until broader state regulations take effect, municipalities can find other solutions to address tenants' concerns. Local governments can hold absentee landlords accountable by enforcing property maintenance regulations. Even without a formal landlord registry, they can use deed filings and tax records to track ownership patterns and go after owners that are violating building codes. A community land trust can be established to preserve affordable housing. In this model, a nonprofit organization is formed to hold the land and act as a steward, with the purpose of protecting the interests of residents and meeting the needs of the community. Civic organizations and neighborhood groups can help renters feel connected and informed, which is what we're doing today and will keep doing. We can push for stronger code enforcement when homes fall into disrepair. We can speak up at city council and other meetings and challenge our elected officials to support policies that protect renters. We can speak up when we see homes in our neighborhoods being bundled into investment portfolios. Importantly, we can keep sharing our stories, strengthening our solidarity, and contributing to the broader public conversation. There's no easy solution, but any solution we work toward must prioritize people over profits.
Thank you so much, Eileen. Okay, that was our official list of speakers. Now, I'm going to ask, does anyone feel so moved to speak?
Leslie Shar, online, would like to say something?
Okay. Leslie?
Yep.
You have the floor.
Yes. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. The prior speaker was just talking about the possibility of cities holding absentee landlords highly accountable for the maintenance of properties they own. I would love to see this happen. Let me tell you a story. Property maintenance company employed by the property owners of Pleasant View Apartments on Neshawanik Street is, in my opinion, lacking. Last winter, we had to have the fire chief contact them and explain to them that one must shovel the emergency exits. And he got to tell them that the state of the parking lot with rivers of ice flows was not conducive to the safety of the tenants or the efficacy of the fire department and EMS in responding to calls. That was our introduction to this wonderful maintenance. At any rate, an emergency maintenance request was filed on Saturday. That was for a leak in a basement, unexplained. Okay, so emergency maintenance request on Saturday. We were told somebody was out on Sunday, but didn't find an active leak and they would respond further on Monday. Now, none of us saw the guy, okay? We're taking them on faith. On Monday, there was still standing water in portions of the basement. Their initial response was to place a box fan in the unventilated basement. Now, the windows in our basements have been sealed because sometimes tenants would open them and forget them. And, we get little critters and rain and stuff. But at any rate, they didn't crack a door to the outside, nothing. One box fan. And the pièce de résistance was they plugged it into the outlet at a tenant's washing machine, so they were stealing the tenant's electricity. Nice guys, nice guys. The tenant unplugged the fan and told them to get their own electricity. On Tuesday, there was still standing water. there was the fan running, but the place was starting to smell moldy, and there was still no ventilation. Nobody had opened a window or cracked a door. They did come later in the day and install a couple of dehumidifiers, which as I speak are still running. And while the place is starting to dry out, it's still wet, it's still stinky, and as far as we know, there has been no active effort to find the source of the leak. We've pointed out a leaking pipe in the basement ceiling and the continued leak in a tenant's water heater, which leak has been reported and has been ongoing for a number of months. I reached out to our former maintenance person. He'd been living here and been our maintenance person for about 20 years. And I showed him the photos of the basement. He said the only time he ever saw it so bad was when a water heater had burst. And that caused a real problem in one of the basements. But normally when we get water in our basements, it's because a water heater has sprung a leak or the gutters were clogged and the water had nowhere to go from the outflow. So, now, on an aside, one of the tenants who lives above the basement, he's in a first floor apartment, so there's nothing between him and the basement except, a little insulation and floorboards. He is in extremely fragile health. And we're worried that black mold has taken hold. This man has an illness that can be traced to his military service, and he does not need to get any sicker any quicker. That's happening all on its own. He does not need our wonderful property management company to help him along with that. A couple of weeks ago, I noticed damp spots in the basement of the building where I live, which is a different building. And they dried up and went away. But this morning, there were 2 wet spots in the same spots of my basement. I took photos. I requested, maintenance through the app because you must do everything through the app. Oh, yes. I have my next door neighbor does not have a computer, does not have a cell phone.
Leslie? There are a couple other folks who want to speak. Are there any final words that you want to say?
Okay, my feeling is that we really could stand on ombudsman in this city to handle talking to the landlord about getting rid of property managers when they do not do their job. We are suffering the effects of this. It is affecting our health. It is affecting our feelings about where we live, our pride in where we live, and it really is unconscionable. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. All right, anyone else who wants to speak? Kate? Yeah, thank you.
So I was asked if I felt compelled to speak, and initially I didn't. And then in all of this, I realized that I want to address the representatives here that are gathered directly. My neighbors at Pleasant View have spoken very articulately about what we're facing there, and I don't think that my particular perspective on that will add anything to what they've said. But I understand that this might be a scary prospect to alienate property owners in Easthampton. And I'll tell you that I am also a property owner in Easthampton. I bought a 2-family home in the New City area more than 12 years ago. And although I'm impacted by this issue, since buying my home, I have consistently rented under market value, never higher than HUD fair market. When I bought the home, there was a tenant there. I never raised his rent until he was ready to move on. One of the tenants I have presently is a community member who it just so happens that I knew because we live in community, and I knew his grandson from T-ball and his granddaughter from seeing them around, and they needed a place and they couldn't pay fair market rent but this was a family with school-age children that I knew personally that I wanted to keep in this community. And I'm a teacher and a single mom. It's not that I don't need money, right? I need money, but I'm someone who believes in living my values. And if we're going to be a community that lives our values, we have to be willing to stand up to property owners who think that it's absolutely their entitlement to have endless profit. We have to stand up. And I know you could say, well, that's easy for you to say because you don't charge that rent anyway, right? Maybe, but I don't do that because I don't need it. I do it because that's my values. And if I can do that as a single mom, as a teacher, with all of those constraints, again, I need the money. If I'm willing to do it, you should be willing to do it, right? Take the hit.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, would you like to? I'm sorry, I don't know. Okay, I'd like to welcome up Lindsay.
Hi, everyone. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I'm happy to have a microphone and the privilege to do that tonight. I have been a city employee in the mayor's office for the last 7 years, so I have had conversations with many of you in this room about the situations and crises we are facing. But I'm not here tonight speaking up as a city employee. I'm speaking to you with solidarity. As someone who lived in federal subsidized housing for 15 years as a single mother, where I made too much income to survive, but not enough to live. My challenges were different, but my landlord was the federal government. And as we all know, those situations are constantly changing and they are not easy. And I can only imagine what other people in federal subsidized housing are facing right now, as well as people like you all. If it weren't for my partner, when we purchased our home in 2017, I would never own a home. I cannot do it on my own. And many of us suffer those consequences today by the situations we have heard tonight. So I stand in solidarity with you, and I will do what I can to help fight alongside of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Any other brave souls? Okay, oh, I do see one. CD? Come on up, CD.
Welcome, everyone. Connie, it's a pleasure to share space with you again. We've been on different trips associated with UMass Amherst. So my plea to you is, one, I was a former Easthampton tenant. I've dealt with small-time landlords. They are small-time landlords here in Easthampton. I will not name names. But you do have your fair share of housing crisis, as all of Western Mass does. But my ask really is for Connie. Connie, while you hold a political position here in this town, I do believe, respectfully, congratulations. You are affiliated with UMass Amherst still. And you're affiliated with an amazing department. I'm going to say this. And we teach students at UMass Amherst to become the next policy makers, educators, advocates. And I think it's time that we bring the urgency of the housing shortage back to UMass Amherst into these departments, umbrellaed under the SBS department. STEPIC, social political policy students, and our law students. Because the more...
Sorry, we're talking about Easthampton.
It's all good, but it's relative to Easthampton as well. As she is an Easthampton resident, and the ask is only that, as an Easthampton person, they use their benefit at UMass to help you guys fight your fights, Junie.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, CD. All right, any other Easthampton residents who would like to speak? Going once? Twice? Okay, sold. Great. Well, thank you everyone for coming out tonight. It was really great. The energy at the rally, amazing. The energy in the room, so wonderful. It's great to see, you know, all of my neighbors coming out to support each other. And you know, in this time of need, right? So we heard a lot from people who are living in these complexes that are getting bought by hurricane properties. And like other corporate landlords, and the crazy like rent increases that they're facing, completely untenable. We've heard from people who are struggling to even make rent. They're about to become homeless, and just getting forced out of the city. Right, so I have one ask for everybody in the room, which is, if you haven't already done it, talk to someone who you don't know. Talk to one of your neighbors, because everyone in here is a neighbor of yours. Most people in here are a neighbor of yours. And yeah, just get to know someone who you don't know and try and connect like your housing fight, your housing struggles and theirs, because it's absolutely critical in this moment that we all band together and we fight this together. And specifically for the city councilors, I just want to reiterate the asks that we've all been making, that you all take a more active role in passing rent control legislation in the Commonwealth, right? We need you on Beacon Hill, and we're actually going there on July 29th. We're chartering a bus, and we're rallying people, and this bus is for open invitation for everyone, but I'm extending it specifically to city councilors. Because there's going to be a hearing on the rent control legislation in the Senate. So we're going to rally there. We're going to put pressure on the Senate to put this bill through. So I'd like to invite everyone. That's July 29th. It's a Tuesday.
Do you know the time of the hearing? The hearing is at 1, so the rally will be at noon, the hearing is at 1. We will release a registration link for you to register, because we are capped as to how many people are on the bus. So watch social media, and if you're on our email blast, watch the email blast, and also if you're not on our email blast, ask somebody to register how you get on it.
Yeah, thank you, Rose. Yeah, so hope to see all of you there. We also want councilors to show up to our rallies and protest against these corporate landlords, because tenants need to know that you have our backs, and corporate landlords need to know that we can all see how they're treating residents in Easthampton. We can see what they're trying to do in our city. And then the last thing that we're asking is, again, that you pass a citywide ordinance to regulate corporate ownership and private equity firms from buying up our homes. Housing should not be a business model for investors to get rich off of, and we have an opportunity to lead the way with your leadership here in Easthampton. So thank you again, everybody, for your time, and I hope to see you all very soon. And I will open the floor for any questions that hopefully someone else will be answering. Yeah.
How can we better support the work Springfield No One Leaves does?
So if you want to support Springfield No One Leaves, definitely talk to one of us in the red shirts, get on our lists, make a connection. We're almost definitely going to ask you to have a one-on-one with us so we can get to know each other, get to know where you're coming from. And then we also have every other Tuesday community member meetings for people who are going through a housing struggle to get together and to support each other, to learn from each other, to just be in community. It's like such a valuable source of support and comfort for people to be able to go to a place and know that everyone there is going through something similar or has been through something similar, and like that we get each other on that level. So those are every other Tuesday night. at 6 to 8 p.m. in our Springfield office on 143 Main Street. And our last one was this past Tuesday. Oh, and then our next one is on the 29th, but we're not doing it.
We'll be on the bus.
Because we'll be in Boston. So the one after that is sometime in August. It's too far out for me to calculate in my head what day that is. Oh, yes, please.
I'm Katie, I'm the organizing director at Springfield No One Leaves. So we do our work in a couple different ways. We actively work, so we actively work to keep people in their homes while they're facing displacement, whether it be through representation on evictions or foreclosures. So we will work with folks to keep them in their home, helping build a defense, turning out at court support, organizing against the landlord, whatever it needs to be, right? And then we bring those folks in to change the systems that created those situations in the first place, right? That is why we are here in Easthampton. We work all over Western Mass in all 4 counties. We have members in Pittsfield, right, that we're actively engaging with. And this is something that we want to be doing across Western Mass. We want to be having renters rallies. The reality is that so many of our elected officials haven't been a renter in a long time. Right? And so it is easy to forget what the way of the land is when you haven't been a renter and things have changed so much. So we want to be having more renters rallies across the valley. We want to be meeting with other elected officials and bringing the stories and the solutions that renters are able to come up with, right? Like we know what we need. And so ways you can support us is donating, right? This money takes work. Become a sustaining donor, even if it's $5 a month, right? It's also showing up for your local tenant associations. We have 2 that are currently formed in this room. The hurricane property tenants, we're actively working to engage the other properties of hurricane tenants to, right? So in Chicopee and in Agawam and Russell, these are all the places that hurricane properties owns. So support your local tenant associations and then organize with us, right? If you are an apartment building, talk to us. Let's organize. Even if you're not facing a rent crisis at the moment, you probably will be at some point, right? And if we're organized before the crisis hits, the more power, the better relationships we have in order to move forward. So those are the ways that you can support and engage.
I'll just add that, like Katie said, it's not just about tenant associations, it's bank tenant associations. So I'm so sorry if I'm gonna burst your bubble, but there's no such thing as homeownership. You are either a tenant of the bank or you are a tenant of the city or town that you live in. And so all our homeowners, our small landlords, our manufactured home parks or mobile home parks, any type of tenant is the work that we are doing. So as you saw earlier, we have our West Street Village. We have organizing up in West Stockbridge. I have to be careful because I always want to call it Stockholm. So, and as Katie said, we don't take government funding, so we are not impacted. So that $5 goes a long way and keeps 20 people in their homes, right? It allows me to have staff. And so those Tuesday night meetings, there are volunteer housing attorneys right there to assist tenants that are facing no-fault evictions. So I encourage let your neighbors know at Adams Street, if you get a no-fault notice because you did not accept the rent increase, make sure you let us know so we can make sure all your paperwork are through. We'll do mock trials with you. But all of that takes time, right? And so I'm gonna leave that there because it's a long night and we were all outside and it was really, really hot. And I thank you all for coming and for supporting. And again, you can visit our website on the Contact Us. Has donation links. It has the ally list where you can get on our email blast. It's a very simple form. You just sign in. And that's when you'll get notified when our Tuesday night meetings are.
Any other questions folks have? Thank you. Thanks. I want to thank the city councilors too. Like it is a brave situation to walk in to have all your residents and constituents talking at you. So thanks for being here. Thanks for the work that you've already moved forward with the resolution and like join us, right? This is your city, you know. So thank you. And great job, Judy.